All right. Hey, but speaking of laugh and cry, we're talking about these rebellious Israelites, these people of God, and let me straighten up my business here. Get to the business end of a story. All right, March 15th. Before we continue with the reading, though, just a quick update on what we'll do for the next season. We've got 2 more weeks of readings, and we started this journey on looks like March 26th, but then we had a few days where it was hard for us to figure out how to press the record button, so it bounced in and out. So I think our last day will be March 28th, and at that point, then I'll start sending out the last year's Bible study if you want to read it. And you can see that we've had some growth over the course of time, which is kind of hard to believe on mornings like this when we started a minute late. But we're there's a certain familiarity to our early studies, but a little bit of awkwardness as well. So you might enjoy that. And otherwise, thankfully, we've all learned to read the Bible together daily. We'll just be doing that without being together. So hopefully that's still something that you continue on as a practice. But today, March 15th, Joshua's farewell address. The initial phase of the conquest now complete, Joshua turns his thoughts to the ongoing need for Israel's spiritual commitment to God. In a manner reminiscent of Moses, Joshua addresses his people on 3 separate occasions. The first is a farewell to the soldiers of the eastern tribes who have joined the western tribes in taking Canaan. Joshua blesses them and exhorts them to remain faithful to God and his laws. Great concern arises when the rest of Israel learns that the eastern tribes have built an altar on their way back across the Jordan. But all ends well when it is learned that no rebellion was intended, as some had feared. Joshua's second address to the western tribes is a review of God's blessing and a stern warning against involvement with pagan people and their idolatry. The last address calls the people to renew their covenant with God, as each generation must do for itself. The people vow to be faithful, but Joshua knows that it is easier said than done. In order to encourage their faithfulness, Joshua constructs a memorial of this third covenant between Israel and God. Then Joshua summoned the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half-tribe of Manasseh, and said to them, "You have done all that Moses, the servant of the Lord, commanded, and you have obeyed me in everything I commanded. For a long time now, to this very day, you have not deserted your fellow Israelites, but have carried out the mission the Lord your God gave you. Now that the Lord your God has given them rest as he promised, return to your homes in the land that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you on the other side of the Jordan. But be very careful to keep the commandment and the law that Moses, the servant of the Lord, gave you, to love the Lord your God, to walk in obedience to him, to keep his commands, to hold fast to him, and to serve him with all of your heart and with all your soul." Joshua blessed them and sent them away, and they went to their homes. To the half-tribe of Manasseh, Moses had given land in Bashan, and the other half-tribe Joshua gave land to the west side of the Jordan along with their fellow Israelites. When Joshua sent them home, he blessed them, saying, "Return to your homes with your great wealth, with large herds of livestock, with silver, gold, bronze, and iron, and a great quantity of clothing, and divide the plunder from your enemies with your fellow Israelites. So the Reubenites, the Gadites, the half tribe of Manasseh left the Israelites at Shiloh in Canaan and returned to Gilead, their own land, which they had acquired in accordance with the command of the Lord through Moses. When they came to Gilead, near the Jordan in the land of Canaan, the Reubenites, the Gadites, and the half tribe of Manasseh built an imposing altar there by the Jordan. When the Israelites heard that they had built the altar on the border of Canaan of Gilead, near the Jordan on the Israelite side, the whole assembly of Israel gathered at Shiloh to go to war against them. So the Israelites sent Phinehas, son of Eleazar, the priest, to the land of Gilead, to Reuben, Gad of the half tribe of Manasseh. With him, they sent 10 of the chief men, one from each of the tribes of Israel, each the head of a family division among the Israelite clans. When they went to Gilead, to Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh, they said to them, the whole assembly of the Lord says, how could you break faith with God of Israel like this? How could you turn away from the Lord and build yourself an altar in rebellion against him now? Was not the sin of Peor enough for us? Not up to this very day, we have not cleansed ourselves from that sin, even though the plague fell on the community of the Lord, and you are now turning away from the Lord. If you rebel against the Lord today, tomorrow he will be angry with the whole community of Israel. If the land you possess is defiled, come over to the Lord's land where the Lord's tabernacle stands, and share the land with us. But do not rebel against the Lord or against us by building an altar for yourself, other than the altar of the Lord our God, when Achan, son of Zerah, was unfaithful in regard to the devoted things. Did not wrath come on the whole community of Israel? He was not the only one who died for his sins.
Then Reuben, Gad, and the half tribe of Manasseh replied to the heads of the clans of Israel, the mighty one, God the Lord, the mighty one, God the Lord. He knows, and let Israel know. If this had been in rebellion or disobedience to the Lord, do not spare us this day. If we have built our own altar to turn away from the Lord and to offer burnt offerings and grain offerings, or to sacrifice fellowship offerings on it, may the Lord himself call us to account. No, we did it for fear that someday your descendants might say to ours, what do you have to do with the Lord, the God of Israel? The Lord has made the Jordan a boundary between us and you Reubenites and Gadites. You have no share in the Lord, so your descendants might cause ours to stop fearing the Lord. That is why we said, let us get ready and build an altar, but not for burnt offerings or sacrifices. On the contrary, it is to be a witness between us and you and the generations that follow, that we will worship the Lord at his sanctuary with our burnt offerings, sacrifices, and fellowship offerings. Then in the future, your descendants will not be able to say to ours, you have no share in the Lord. And we said, if they ever say this to us or to our descendants, we will answer, look at the replica of the Lord's altar, which our ancestors built, not for burnt offerings and sacrifices, but as a witness between us and you. Far be it from us to rebel against the Lord and turn away from him today by building an altar for burnt offerings, grain offerings, and sacrifices, other than the altar of the Lord our God that stands before his tabernacle. When Phinehas the priest and the leaders of the community, the heads of the clans of the Israelites, heard what Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh had to say, they were pleased. And Phinehas, son of Eleazar the priest, said to Reuben, Gad, and Manasseh, today we know that the Lord is with us, because you have not been unfaithful to the Lord in this matter. Now you have rescued the Israelites from the Lord's hand. Then Phinehas, son of Eleazar the priest, and the leaders returned to Canaan from their meeting with the Reubenites and Gadites in Gilead and reported to the Israelites. They were glad to hear the report and praised God. And they talked no more about going to war against them to devastate the country where the Reubenites and the Gadites lived. And the Reubenites and the Gadites gave the altar this name, a witness between us that the Lord is God.
After a long time had passed and the Lord had given Israel rest from all their enemies around them, Joshua, by then a very old man, summoned all Israel, their elders, leaders, judges, and officials, and said to them, I am very old. You yourselves have seen everything the Lord your God has done to all of these nations for your sake. It was the Lord your God who fought for you. Remember how I have allotted as an inheritance for your tribes all the land of the nations that remain, the nations I conquered between the Jordan and the Mediterranean Sea in the west. The Lord your God himself will push them out for your sake. He will drive them out before you, and you will take possession of their land, as the Lord your God promised you. Be very strong. Be careful to obey all that is written in the book of the law of Moses, without turning aside to the right or to the left. Do not associate with these nations that remain among you. Do not invoke the names of their gods or swear by them. You must not serve them or bow down to them, but you are to hold fast to the Lord your God as you have until now. The Lord has driven out before you great and powerful nations. To this day, no one has been able to withstand you. One of you routs 1,000 because the Lord your God fights for you, just as he promised. So be very careful to love the Lord your God. But if you turn away and ally yourselves with the survivors of these nations that remain strong, or that remain among you, and if you intermarry with them and associate with them, then you may be sure that the Lord your God will no longer drive out these nations before you. Instead, they will become snares and traps for you, whips on your backs and thorns in your eyes, until you perish from this good land which the Lord your God has given you. Now, I am about to go the way of all the earth. You know with all your heart and soul that not one of all the good promises the Lord your God gave you has failed. Every promise has been fulfilled, not one has failed. But just as all the good things the Lord your God has promised you have come to you, so he will bring on you all the evil things he has threatened, until the Lord your God has destroyed you from this good land he has given you. If you violate the covenant of the Lord your God, which he commanded you, and go and serve other gods and bow down to them, the Lord's anger will burn against you, and you will quickly perish from the good land he has given you. Then Joshua assembled all the tribes of Israel at Shechem. He summoned the elders, leaders, judges, and officials of Israel, and they presented themselves before God. Joshua said to all the people, This is what the Lord, the God of Israel, says. Long ago, your ancestors, including Terah, the father of Abraham and Nahor, lived beyond the Euphrates River and worshipped other gods. But I took your father Abraham from the land beyond the Euphrates and led him throughout Canaan and gave him many descendants. I gave him Isaac, and to Isaac I gave Jacob and Esau. I assigned the hill country of Seir to Esau, but Jacob and his family went down to Egypt. Then I sent Moses and Aaron, and I afflicted the Egyptians by what I did there, and I brought you out. When I brought your people out of Egypt, you came to the sea, and the Egyptians pursued them with chariots and horsemen as far as the Red Sea. But they cried to the Lord for help, and he put darkness between you and the Egyptians. He brought the sea over them and covered them. You saw with your own eyes what I did to the Egyptians. Then you lived in the wilderness for a long time.
I brought you to the land of the Amorites who lived east of the Jordan. They fought against you, but I gave them into your hands. I destroyed them before you, and you took possession of their land. When Balak, son of Zippor, the king of Moab, prepared to fight against Israel, he sent for Balaam, son of Beor, to put a curse on you. But I would not listen to Balaam, so he blessed you again and again, and I delivered you out of his hand. Then you crossed the Jordan and came to Jericho. The citizens of Jericho fought against you as they did also the Amorites, Perizzites, Canaanites, Hittites, and Girgashites, Hivites, and Jebusites. But I gave them into your hands. I sent the hornet ahead of you, which drove them out before you, also the two Amorite kings. You did not do it with your own sword and bow. So I gave you a land on which you did not toil and cities you did not build. and you live in them and eat from vineyards and olive groves that you did not plant. Now fear the Lord and serve him with all faithfulness. Throw away the gods your ancestors worshipped beyond the Euphrates River in the Egypt and served the Lord. But if serving the Lord seems undesirable to you, then choose for yourselves this day whom you will serve, whether the gods your ancestors served beyond the Euphrates or the gods of the Amorites in whose land you are living. But as for me and my house, we will serve the Lord. Then the people answered, far be it from us to forsake the Lord to serve other gods. It was the Lord our God himself who brought us and our parents up out of Egypt from that land of slavery and performed those great signs before our eyes. He protected us on our entire journey and among the nations throughout which we traveled. And the Lord drove out before us all the nations, including the Amorites who lived in the land. We too will serve the Lord because he is our God. Joshua said to the people, you are not able to serve the Lord. He is a holy God. He is a jealous God. He will not forgive your rebellion and your sins. If you forsake the Lord and serve foreign gods, he will turn and bring disaster on you and make an end of you after he has been good to you. But the people said to Joshua, no, we will serve the Lord. Then Joshua said, you are witnesses against yourselves that you have chosen to serve the Lord. Yes, we are witnesses, they replied. Now then, said Joshua, throw away the foreign gods that are among you and yield your hearts to the Lord, the God of Israel. And the people said to Joshua, we will serve the Lord our God and obey him. On that day, Joshua made a covenant for the people, and there at Shechem, he reaffirmed for them decrees and laws. And Joshua recorded these things in the book of the law of God. Then he took a large stone and set it up there under the oak near the holy place of the Lord. See, he said to all the people, this stone will be a witness against us. It has heard all the words the Lord has said to us. It will be a witness against you if you are untrue to your God. Then Joshua dismissed the people, each to their own inheritance.
All right. Well, very interesting stuff. As you were reading, was there anything that popped out for you today?
One of my favorite Bible verses is that Joshua 24. As for me and my house, I such a powerful statement. Do what you want. As for me, this is where we're going.
Didn't it seem? Can you imagine after making that oath, keeping some of the old gods? Somehow somebody kept them somewhere. They were still around.
It is interesting too. I mean, how easy it is, for us today to, make really honorable, good commitments, oaths, like to our wives or to our husband, and then for us to live selfishly and go our own way. And it's like, how is it that we made that oath and then chose that path? It's kind of remarkable how similar or how easy it is for me to get my mind around their plight.
I like
the picture. Go ahead.
I thought it was kind of funny too, is that Joshua said, see, this stone will be a witness against us. It has heard all the words. I said, now you know that that's a rock. So I just said, I don't know if I walked past it going, this stone has heard all the stuff with all the warnings. You're thinking, I don't know, I'd be leery going, okay, now we said this in front of this rock. Now we saw all the stuff that God has done, plus all the warnings. And he said, this rock hears us. I don't know if I want to go against a rock. That
Well,
would be me.
It's a picture though. And what's really happening is you're giving your whole self to God. But you're not, because you got hidden little rooms in your heart that you didn't let him into, secret places, and you didn't give them all. I think that's it's all a picture of what's really happening in there.
Yes. But I still would have been afraid of the rock though, because I'm like, all the stuff that I saw God do, and he said, this rock has heard you. And I'm like, that would be me, because even in my day to day, when I'm doing something and I'm like, Lord, I am so sorry that I thought that. Okay, you're right. I have to quickly check myself. So I would be thinking about the rock heard everything I said, and I don't.
Yeah, and I don't know that they were really a superstitious people, but they did see, you know, seas open up and swallow Egyptians. They did see rivers stop and make ways. They did see hail destroy armies, you know.
Yes.
So they did see God use the very
Mhm.
nature around them, and
Mhm.
so hey, how fascinating is it that, you know, they were ready to go to war against their brothers uh, and their sisters over a misunderstanding. Did you guys see that at the beginning? I mean, they didn't they didn't know why they had built that altar, and they had amassed the army to go to war. They sent every head of the tribes to go and figure this thing out because they were so concerned. But they were ready at a drop of a hat to go to battle if what they believed was true was true. But they were wrong. They had a mistaken belief that
Were they
drove them to
trigger
the
happy?
brink. They were driven to the brink of war on a mistaken belief.
Mhm.
And you know, Mark, I think about today, you know, how battle lines get drawn very quickly, right? And
Mhm.
emotions get high almost instantly. But one of the things that happened here that I think is a little bit different than what we see today is at least they paused long enough to listen and to learn what it was and what the purpose that those folks had behind putting that altar up, right? I
Mhm.
don't know if today that we are willing to listen long enough and cool down enough not to go to battle.
Mhm.
So I appreciate the fact that you're right. And they were so worked up, you know, we're going to throw down right now.
Yeah. Yeah,
Right.
they held back on the trigger. So luckily, you know, they went half cocked, but they didn't pull the trigger. It wasn't you know, fire first and then aim.
Right.
They decided they better take a little closer look. But I thought it was really remarkable that, you know, I mean, here they could have been shoulder to shoulder battling against God's enemies, and then what, days, weeks later, they're like, oh man, those rascals, we got to take them out. And uh, how important of an issue was it that they had decided to really gather as an army and send their tribal leaders to sort it out? But I mean, they were ready to go. I mean, it just struck me as how quickly we get bent out of shape and we don't know the story. We don't really know what's going on. And the imagination with which we can assume a wrong has been committed or an offense has been committed, and we don't trust the hearts of the other. It leads us down these paths that we could quickly regret, you know. And
We can really be passionate people. Um, and imagine you just defeated all those. How many was there? 20 something? I don't remember, you know, all these nations, kings, and you defeated them all, and you did all this work, and you're done. And then you think that your group has turned against you and they're going to destroy what you just did. You
mhm.
really could be really emotional right then.
Yeah, a little vindictive, a little emotional, a little bit protective.
Mhm.
Yeah, self-preserving, you know, and they were concerned that, and I guess from a in the sense that if they had been right, I mean, their concern would have been valid, right? I mean, that of
Mhm.
after all of this, we're gonna lose God's favor because of these numbskulls,
Mhm.
you know. Um, yeah, that had to be quite a moment for them. And what a relief, though, to find out as son of Eleazar and the tribal leaders come back and said, we didn't see that right. Let me tell you what's really going on here. I mean, that had to come as a wave of relief, right?
Mm.
Yeah, and some of you in the chat have noticed that Tanya has joined us on TV today. So and that's and what a good thing that is. All right, why do we need to be very careful to obey God as Joshua advised Israel? Why do you think it's important for us to be careful to obey God?
Well, for these guys, we just watched them make this really terrible oath. They made an oath
Mm-hmm.
against themselves that they wouldn't turn to the right or the left. I mean, that they made a big promise, and God, right there, they said that if we go to the right or the left, you can destroy us.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I mean it's a serious matter, and I think Mark, when you mentioned it earlier, that sometimes we can make decisions emotionally and say, oh yeah, no, we're really, no, I'm serious this time, I'm really going to do it, right?
Mm-hmm.
And I think what they're saying is, are you serious? This is a commitment that you need to make. And so if you're going to follow God's laws, if you say, yeah, I'm going to follow God's laws, one of the things I think of is, you better know them,
Mm-hmm.
right? If you say, yeah, I'm going to do all of that, really?
Mm-hmm.
Are you really? No. Are you really going to do right? And I think that's why I
Mm-hmm.
say, listen, be careful what you say.
Yeah. Well, and I think, today is a great example of how things that we desire sometimes, it's just hard to do. I mean, how many of you woke up this morning, and those of you in America, sorry, those of you that, I mean, obviously, they don't do daylight savings time in Ukraine because they're actually smart people there, right? But here in America, we do this thing called daylight savings time where we check the clocks back an hour. And how many of you woke up this morning going, man, did morning get here soon, right? It felt like morning just got here soon. And Todd, you have a commitment kind of to yourself that you like to go work out before the Bible study. And how easy is it, even though we have a desire, to set our desires aside, or a commitment, and to set our commitments aside because I don't really feel like it today.
Yeah,
I actually feel
today was an epic fail. I'm just going to point that out right now. It was an epic fail.
right, but I got a desire. I got a desire to work out today, and so I was planning to work out after the study. So I'm right on track right now. But I was coming down the stairs, and I was thinking to myself, if I don't work out pretty much directly following this study, it doesn't get easier as the day goes on.
Right.
It's like with every hour that passes through the day, my commitment to this notion wanes just a little bit. And by the time I get to dinner, if I've not worked out, I'm pretty confident that I've lost the day. Right?
Yeah.
It's just, there's really very little evidence. I've got very little evidence that come 6 o'clock, there's a hope that I'm going to work. I just don't have a lot of evidence. Now, I know a lot of people, they work out at that time and they've got plenty of evidence. In my life, very little evidence. And the point isn't even about working out or daylight savings time or waking up early. The point is we make commitments to ourselves that become very hard to keep for all kinds of reasons, and suddenly new desires creep in, and the thoughts of following through with our commitment become less and less. I'm not even sure what the right word is, but we're whimsical in our approach to big commitments in life sometimes.
Well, and that's true because for me, like, I sit in my little corner here where I have my computer, and you're right, we can set up all those commitments and we have all kinds of reasons. We can even put those reasons right in front of us so we don't forget to do them. Like, my exercise bike is right here, so I don't have an excuse to get out of my corner without passing my exercise bike, and I'll look at it and go, I don't feel like it, and go right back to bed.
How many exercise bikes do you think have doubled as places to hold laundry?
Mine's got clothes on it right now.
What is it that makes us enjoy giving ourselves some freedom so much? We shouldn't enjoy that. We're breaking rules. We're breaking commitments.
Yeah.
So I'm going to get on my bike after study. I'm going to do that because now that whole breaking commitment thing just kind of tore me in the heart a little bit.
Yeah. You have to throw all those clothes on the floor though, and then you have to wash them again. It's just it's a whole downward cycle, you know. And so you got that voice in your head that just says, skip it, right? It's amazing.
I'm going to do it. I'll do
It's
it.
it's amazing how quickly we can get off track from the things that we want to value or that we think are important, which I think is really I think it's a universal problem, but it really leads us to the next question, doesn't it? I mean, how do you think our actions and our attitudes affect the reputation of Christ and his church?
I like to be real in that, like just like I was with my bike things, it sits there. But to be real with that, I kind of want to identify too with the same struggles that other people may have when you commit to something, because I'm not perfect. I fall all the time. I mean, even if I make a commitment to myself, I mean, I tend, without God's help, I will not follow through with those things because I know me. I'm like, no, there's something else much better for me to be doing, like sleeping or maybe, watching TV in the morning or something. Why do I need to work out? And then, the conviction comes in where God will say something like, like Bob just did, we're not committed to ourselves. And I'm like, yes, you're right. And it's that kind of stuff that makes me tell other people, I'm not perfect and I need God's help all the time. So we can have a journey together, both of us. I mean, that's what this is about anyway. Us walking together in our struggles every day.
Hey, good. So speaking of that, those of you who are tempted to need a half an hour of TV before you get going to work, look at what a gift Tanya has given you today. I mean, you've just got the best half hour that you're going to get right here from her on the TV. You don't need any more TV today.
The good old days.
Yeah. You can turn yours off. You got a good 30 minutes of her right here today. So and how many of you have watched the news in the last year and felt like, you know what? That was truly edifying. I feel built up and ready to roll. It's so amazing how important it is to me to see the news and how unhelpful it is in every area of my life to have seen it. It's like somewhere along the line I bought into a fib that news is important, you know. So, all right, Todd, what do you got? Anything else? I mean, related to that?
Well, when you mentioned TV and of course over the last year, and with the events that occurred at the Capitol, a while back, thinking about this idea of representing Christ. There were those there who were knocking down doors while they were waving flags about Jesus, right? And I think, unfortunately, there are probably many people who look at that and say, yep, those Jesus freaks, there they are again, those lunatics, right? And so I think that, not putting politics into it, but just how people would, they're going to judge a large group of people based on some smaller groups of people's actions. We have that ability to generalize, don't we, to a much larger audience that, well, I saw this person who claims to be a Christ follower do this. Consequently, all Christ followers are, crazy, right? Whatever it happens to be. And I think that is important that we, you talk a lot about congruence, Mark, and that we behave in a manner that would reflect or exemplify, what we believe. And when we don't, I think it creates a lot of confusion.
And people will follow it. When I think we talked about this a long time ago, when I first got married, my two greatest spiritual leaders fell, both of them, two men who I really looked up to. And shortly after that, I left the Lord for a while. I was done with it, because I was really looking at them more than I was looking at Jesus. But that,
I was thinking about, the funny thing, like with the riots that we saw and the flags, the Jesus saves flags that were being waved, is it just that kind of stuff just breaks my heart. And at the same time, I can't help thinking about, in June, one of the things that was so remarkable to me, as Minneapolis in particular, but all over the country, there was riots. All over the world, really, there were riots in relationship to the George Floyd incident, and what very few people. I reported it here a little bit, but what very few people knew was the thousands of Christians that every morning were getting up and going through the streets of Minneapolis, cleaning the streets. Thousands and thousands of Christians just cleaning their neighborhoods and cleaning the neighborhoods of their neighbors, and
I didn't know that.
and being a silent witness to their love for their neighbor, as people were rebelling and angry and bitter, and yeah, that never really got recorded or reported or declared, and yet I know of dozens of pastors that led their churches on crusades of marching through their streets with garbage bags, just to try to be a cool breeze in the midst of a heat, and to try to be a salve in the midst of an open wound. And that's the Christianity that I want to be embracing. That's the kind of people that I want to be embraced with and aligned with, are those who are, how do I become power under control, which is the definition of meekness, right? You have blessed are the meek, the very idea that, you might be a wild horse that's been broken and now are useful to the master, that you might be able to be bridled and led by God. I want us to be majestic, all of our power, all of our strength, and under the control of the master, right? And so that idea of what does it mean to be meek, which isn't to be weak or to be passive or to be unresponsive to God's leadership. It's absolutely to be all of the power that God gave you under his control. And I think that can be a real testimony to the world around us. But what do you think when you look at life can be a snare to Christians today, kind of as Israel's neighbors were to them? What can be the snare for Christians today?
Something that I think about is when we begin to operate in areas of gray, when the boundary lines begin to get blurred a little bit. I wonder if that was the case with the Israelites, because their nation or their boundaries were right up against the boundaries of those who didn't believe at all, and they saw times when they would intermarry, and how other cultures and other beliefs began to bleed back in to what they had, and the lines get blurred. I think sometimes that creates a problem.
I agree with Todd. I truly do. When those lines get blurred like that, all kinds of things break out, and it doesn't do anything but cause more disruption in everything that we're doing. And it doesn't touch one thing; it spreads out and touches everything. When we're not coming to an agreement on something, it will not go well.
Well, let me pray that God gives us courage and fortitude not to get ensnared by those things that draw our hearts away from him today. So God, we do often think of this journey as a one day at a time journey, where today we just ask for your grace and your mercy to allow our hearts to be drawn again near to you, to walk well with you, to find ways to live, as Todd said, congruent with who we are, and to allow who we are in you to be recognized and seen by this broken, hurting world around us. That we would be a cool breeze, and that we would be a healing salve, and that we would wind up really demonstrating your love for the lost in the way we live our lives, and that we would set aside the concerns for ourselves, and that we would live in a way that really does bring you honor and glory in this hurting and dark and broken world. In Jesus' name, amen.
Amen.
Okay, gang, it is that time. You make it a great day as you live it for the Lord. God bless you, and thanks to our TV personalities and for the rest of you as well.
Thanks, guys.
Bye, guys. Have a great day.